Hello, and welcome to the BCD606 presentation about behavior questions and attitude questions by Oluwasina Aderiye and Jasmine Vinson. In this presentation, we'll be analyzing the differences and similarities between behavior questions and attitude questions. Even though these questions can get a good insight into what our participants are feeling within a research study, the differences between behavior questions is that behavior questions deal with actions. Why do you do this certain type of thing? And how does this make you feel? While attitude questions pertain to opinions. How do you feel about this certain object or this certain situation? In order to further analyze behavior questions and attitude questions, we will be taking three situations into consideration. One situation in a kindergarten classroom, one situation in a grade 8 classroom, and one situation in a university setting. Hopefully, using these situations can help us give a good insight in between behavior questions and attitude questions. All right, then, let's analyze them together.
Let us observe how behavior and attitude questions can come up in a classroom setting. One day in Mrs. Vinson's classroom, she had asked the children what they wanted to bring for their Easter potluck. One boy, playing in a corner with a ball and his friend, jumped in excitement and said, "I want some chocolate for our potluck." Mrs. Vinson then noted this down and added it to the list of things that was needed for the Easter potluck. She then asked the class, "Who else loves chocolate?" A lot of the children jumped and squealed in excitement and said, "We do." However, one child raised up her hand and said, "I don't really like chocolate. Mommy says chocolate's not good for you." Mrs. Vinson then asked them, "How do you feel when you get chocolates for Easter?" One child raised up her hand and said, "I get super excited. I love all kinds of chocolate and Mommy and Daddy get me them for Easter and many other occasions. I absolutely love chocolate." Another child raised up his hand and he said, "Chocolates are nice, but I'd rather have candy." Through this kindergarten classroom setting, we see and observe how behavior versus attitude questions are asked. Behavior questions are responses pertaining to an action. On the other hand, attitude questions are responses pertaining to an opinion about how they feel based on the question that was asked.
Meanwhile, in a grade 8 classroom, now we're going to take a look at what will happen if we look at attitude and behavior questions in a grade 8 classroom. In Mrs. Aderiye's grade 8 classroom, the students were trying to figure out what questions that they need to perform in order to conduct a survey. The children were trying to find the discrepancies on people's opinions on sports for math class. Elliot was pretty confused on what to do. Should I ask them about what their attitude is towards sports? Or should I ask them how they feel when they have to play their least favorite sport? Emma said, those questions are both fine because you're both going to get an insight into how they feel about their opinion on the sport anyway. The only difference is that you're going to get the reaction on what happens if they have to play that least favorite sport, or how they feel about playing their favorite sport in general. Elliot looked at Jasmine and said, "Yeah, you're right." The important thing about behavior and attitude questions, as even though they are similar in that you're going to be able to describe and see on how a person feels about towards something, a behavior question analyzes the individual's actions. Does this make you feel? Towards an attitude. Why don't you like cereal? Attitude questions always pertain opinions, while behavior questions always pertain actions. Let's delve in more, shall we? Let's really delve into the differences between attitude and behavior questions in a research context. Meanwhile, at Seneca College, in Geraldine's BCD606 lecture, Mrs. Geraldine Lynn Peislow was describing the importance of when creating a questionnaire for a research study. It is essential to understand the type of questions that are needed to be used in order to utilize more accurate results and data. During the lecture, Geraldine explained that having attitude questions in a research study can be effective if you want to inquire about your participants' attitude towards a certain topic you're talking about. However, sometimes a attitude question is not effective when trying to get data. A behavior question is much more effective, as a behavior question will be able to get insight into how a person reacts to a certain topic situation. It's all about knowing and realizing when you're using qualitative and quantitative data. But as well, is you have to be able to actually analyze when a behavior question is needed and when an attitude question is needed. Making intriguing questions bring out the most informative results. I hope this presentation was able to give you a good insight on why it's important to know and talk about the types of questions we ask, so we can be able to determine the data and to be able to place them into the proper codes, but to also analyze what that data is saying. I hope you really enjoyed our presentation, and I hope you have a wonderful day.